Hello and welcome to the CyberMindsz podcast, a podcast where we get to meet and explore the minds of thought leaders in the cybersecurity and technology world. My name is Mark Williams and I am the founder of Quigley Cyber. At Quigley Cyber, we work with clients to provide the best cybersecurity resources and services to help you build the best teams and solutions. And as we say at Quigley Cyber, it's always about the people. So because the strength of your cybersecurity capability is always about the people, in this podcast, we get to meet some of those people that make this industry so great. Grant McKechnie is a seasoned Chief Information Security Officer and Senior Risk Leader with over 2 decades of experience in cybersecurity, risk management and IT leadership. Grant has held key positions at some of the country's largest corporations, including Endeavour Group, Telstra and NBN. Endeavour Group, for those that aren't aware, owns Dan Murphy's. You're probably well aware of Dan Murphy's, as well as other brands, one of the largest in its space in the country. Recognised for his contributions to the field, Grant was named one of the top 10 CISOs or CISOs in the Asia Pacific region by Enterprise Security magazine in 2022. He has also played a crucial role in developing national cybersecurity initiatives, including chairing a working group for the development of a national cybersecurity curriculum for Cert 4 and Advanced Diploma. With a strong technical background and strategic mindset, Grant excels at bridging the gap between complex technical challenges and business outcomes. His leadership philosophy embraces continuous learning, stakeholder collaboration, and the cultivation of high-performing teams. Grant, welcome and thanks for joining us on the CyberMindsz podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Now, having said all that and talked about what you've done, we should also mention that you're now running your own cybersecurity consulting business, CRG. How's that going?
I am Cyber Resilience Group. Yeah, kicked off last April, so we survived the first year. Gathered a business partner and a couple of really nice clients for our first year.
Good to hear. Okay. Now, in preparation for our current chat, you sent me a picture of your setup for today. And I couldn't help but notice in the background what appeared to be a Christmas tree. Now, I could either ask why you still have a Christmas tree up, or I could congratulate you for being so prepared for your Festivus celebrations in a couple of months.
Look, different cultures celebrate Christmas at different times of year. I'm told that in Poland that they put a Christmas tree up in July. I have no connection to Poland. It's just a poor excuse that it got to February and it was still up, and then March and April rolled around, and we're wondering why people take them down. Let's be festive all year round.
There you go. There you go. It's a feature, a bit like some of Microsoft's bugs.
Yes.
There you go. All right, brilliant. Now let's get into it. How would you describe what you do to a 90-year-old person who really doesn't understand the concepts of computing, let alone cybersecurity?
I've got a bit of experience here. I bought my mother, who's now 85, an iPad a few years ago, and it opened up a world of different things. One was the questions, but more the access to so much information and getting her to understand that not everything is true on the internet. Explaining the internet to the elderly, I think, is probably one of the more challenging things you can do. Being the technology-led son, the one that everyone always comes to with, and there's plenty of people in this role across families, across Australia and the world, I bet, trying to explain them in simple, clear terms. So I kind of take the other approach and take a bit of an outcomes approach and explain, how do you want to do it? Don't worry about the why. I think the why is what confuses people, or the how. It's more about, for me, what do you need to do, Mum? And let's get you there, sort of thing. So I think that's kind of the approach. It's a very similar approach I take to boards when I engage with boards.
With regards to respect to those boards, of course.
Yes.
All right. And then, I mean, conversely, how would you describe what you do to a 9-year-old who is, very, very well aware of what they can do with computing?
Yeah. Look, I think a good online hygiene, good cybersecurity hygiene is something like occupational health and safety. And you teach your kids, don't touch the hot kettle, don't open the hot oven, don't stick your finger in the mixer sort of thing. And if you can take those guidelines, those kind of self-preservation approach to your kids, which I did with my daughter, who's now 22, if you take that approach to introducing them to the online world, don't teach them the don't say no. Teach them the why nots. Teach them the why you don't do this, and let them understand the consequence. If they then choose to go down that path, well, you'd be there to support them to pick them up.
Yep, makes sense. Okay, so let's perhaps dial back into your history, perhaps closer to when you were 22 yourself. What's your cybersecurity origin story?
When I was 22, I was in the Navy, which had nothing to do with my cybersecurity story, Royal Australian Navy. I used to be a systems administrator. I'm one of the few that came through the technical ranks that you don't quite so see much these days. Worked for a very large organisation in the UK, BP, and before that, Chase Manhattan. And I was a Unix administrator looking after things like Swift systems and stuff like that in multinational banks. Moved into BP, worked on a trading system, the first digital trading platform for oil with the International Petroleum Exchange, and we had a moment. We had a breach. Now it wasn't anything huge. It was some kids on the outside trying to do some badness, and these guys came in and they did magic stuff. And they left and everything was okay. And I'm like, I want to be one of those guys. Found out it was the digital security team. Went to the CISO, Paul Doyle, who's one of the industry fathers. He said, oh, look, we've got no headcount now. Talked to my deputy, who was John Knowles, who was an amazing operator. And he said, prove to me, show me your value. So I did. I found his calendar through nefarious means, and I turned up at every meeting for 3 weeks, just outside the door saying hi. And he basically told me that I wasn't going to leave him alone, was I? Then, purely by coincidence, Christmas Eve, Oxford Street, in the year 2000, and like rolling 2000 to 2001, I was standing there in Oxford Street in London, and out of nowhere, John Knowles and his family were standing next to me. Just pure coincidence. He goes, oh my God, this isn't going to end. You start with me on Monday. And that was my way into cyber, and I knew nothing. I really didn't. And I had a strong project background with infrastructure and things like that. So I went into the area of vulnerability management and built BP's first global vulnerability thing. And we had amazing discoveries in that, and that just perpetuated it from there. And that was 25 years ago. Came back to Australia, worked at NAB for quite a while under Andrew Dell. From there, left there, went to NBN, discovered operational security, which I absolutely love. Built the first security operations center for the NBN. It's obviously evolved a lot now, but we were back in the days of, I think, 1 million houses at that stage, the first 1 million houses. So everything was new. We were literally moving desks into there under Malcom Shaw. And we did some really good stuff. And we built this SOC that was bleeding edge at the time. So what we did was we had a couple of demonstrations and we won an award. And I had a phone call from Telstra saying, hey, why don't you come over and play over here? And Telstra is, one of the biggest and best shops in the country. And I was there for, I think, 4 years. And I was a GM security operations there and absolutely loved it and revamped their security operations function. From there comes the time. Moved to Woolworths under Peter Vandermerwe, another phenomenal operator. And CISO of the Endeavour Group. Endeavour Group, as you said, owns Dan Murphy's, but they actually own about 28 brands, 28 separate entities. And I was in a part of the demerger from Woolworths to them being their own standalone company. Australia's largest demerger. It was complex. It was hard, but it was an amazing experience. And spent, I think, 4 years with Endeavour Group and decided, hey, I can do this better than everyone else, naively. and started the Cyber Resilience Group, which has been going now for about 14, 15 months.
Fantastic. All right. So really, at the heart of it, your origin in cybersecurity came down to an accidental moment of stalking in London.
Yeah. It'd be called stalking today, I think, under the laws, but I was more showing my value. But yeah.
Right. There you go. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So I'll paint a picture for you. You're in the middle of a cyber crisis. What's your go-to keep calm strategy? Is it meditation? Is it coffee? Is it controlled panic? What does it look like?
I think knowledge is a big part of staying calm there. I try to understand as much as I can about what's going on. I've run some very large breaches in my time, and just large incidents. Not everything is a breach. I think we kind of get fixated on the breaches, but very large incidents over time. And there's a couple of things. If you're calm, your team is calm, and they feed each other. If your team is calm, then you can manage a bit more calmness, sort of thing. The other thing too is I always stay hydrated. I know that sounds silly, but staying hydrated over a long period, you can be 12, 14, 18 hours nonstop, and you've just got to remember to drink and eat, sort of thing. You got to look after yourself. And I try and take a walk every 3 or 4 hours, just trying to clear my head, thinking time. You've got to give your time itself to process, like anything really. So for me, that's a really, really important part, is just maintaining a steady mindset and ensuring that you don't get too exhausted.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, walking seems to be a common theme amongst our guests on CyberMindsz. Just that time out, gather your thoughts. I think Marianne, who was on, talked about if I can't physically go for a walk, I'll just put the earbuds in and listen to some music and find my place that way. So walking seems to be quite common though. And what are you've touched on some of them, but what are the most important qualities you believe a cybersecurity leader should possess?
It's a great question, and I think it's a little bit situational as well for where you are. I think the number one thing is understanding why we do cybersecurity. And funnily enough, I think I only realized this 5-6 years ago of why we actually do it. And when you understand your why, sounds a little Simon Sinek-y, I understand that, but when you understand your why, it's there. And I actually think there's a common why across all senior cyber people, and that's people. Behind every breach, there's a person. Behind every record that's lost, there's an individual, a customer. They're going to be impacted. Behind every company, there's share price impact that impacts people. So people are the real reason we do it. And if you can keep that front of mind, I think, in all of you, so a bit of humanity probably is the best way to phrase it. I think that's a really core quality that you don't always see in senior cyber leaders. And you look at all the really, really good ones, and they've all got an element of humanity about them. The other one is being able to take complex matters and articulate them to non-technical people in a business context. So you can take the most complex vulnerability, the most complex breach, and sometimes they are phenomenally complex, and explain it in a way that's a business person can understand it. For me, that's a core skill and something I worked really, really hard on for a very long time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and you touched on earlier your technical background and that being increasingly rare amongst leaders within the cybersecurity space, and I agree with you. It does equip you uniquely. For some people, it could be a hamstring, could hamstring them. Because they can't make that leap to layman's terms, but obviously that's something that you focused on.
So there was a book I was given by Lynn Garbers, who was a coach I had, and it was called What Got Me Here Won't Get Me There. And in the back of the book, there's like 23 things that technical people do that leaders shouldn't or should avoid doing. And I literally did, I think it was 17 of these things. And I worked my way through them until I got down to what I thought was an acceptable type thing. Because, you don't forget your provenance of being a technical specialist. You just have to change the flavor of it, sort of thing, in the way that you articulate it. So for me, I worked through that with Lingarbas. This was quite a few years ago, when I was at NAB and Telstra, and being able to articulate things in a business context, being able to talk about what the impact of a breach could be in business terms. Market cap is a really strong, you can talk about what the market cap impact based on industry data to a board. You're talking their language. You're talking P&L sheets, you're talking term sheets. So being able to articulate it in that way is a phenomenally powerful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really great insight. I mean, obviously, whether you've got a technical background and you're a leader in cybersecurity, or you're not so strong technically and you're a leader in cybersecurity, each party's bringing something different and equally beneficial, I would suggest, to the role, as long as they are at the top of their game. What do you think non-technical people need to focus on more to get to the top of their game?
Look, having an understanding of the fundamentals. I had a manager one time who was, I guess, injected. We had an incident ongoing, and I had to explain what an IP address was. It was one of those restructures that kind of just surprised everyone. And when we got down to the crux of it, they didn't have the technical capability. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be able to reverse engineer malware or anything like that. You need to know what malware is. You need to know how a network works. You need to know how subnets work. You need to know what DNS is. There's a bunch of fundamentals, I think. So just a fundamental technical knowledge. You're not looking to be an expert, sort of thing. There's a transition you see that you don't see enough of, and that is IT people moving into cyber. IT people are actually where we all came from. The older people in the industry came from. We were systems administrators. We were IT people, and we moved into cyber. Now the two industries seem to be pillars. You can come out of university and go and get $150,000 a year as a cyber expert. I'm sorry, I know it's not a popular opinion, but you're not an expert when you come out of university, and you're not worth $150,000.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's good. Look, it's great to get these perspectives from you and our other guests, because there's a lot of people who'll be listening to this who are at the start of their career or early on, and they're like, okay, what direction should I take? And if I want to, rise up the ranks and be in a position like Grant, what do I do, and what do I have to think about, and how do I leverage my strengths, and also how do I develop my weaknesses further? All right, moving on. What's the most bizarre or hilarious misconception someone has had about your job?
My mum. When I turned 40, I had a party sort of thing, and my mother pulled me aside and she goes, how much longer do you think you can do this? I'm like, Mum, I'm career peaking. I'm doing phenomenal. I'm not certain I'd really want to give it up. She goes, but it must be hard. You must occasionally get into scuffles and things like that. And no, it's corporate. She goes, what do you mean? Don't you do like corporate security? My mother, at the age I was 40, honestly thought that I did some sort of physical security in a building, and I was tackling people because I didn't have their pass on or something. So for me, that's a moment that to this day I clearly didn't articulate to my mum after all those years. I'd been in the industry probably 10, 12 years at that time. So yeah.
Love it. Well, you did have the nickname Bruiser, so she did have something else to go on there.
Yeah, it was Boof, but yes.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, yes. That was more from my rugby days.
Excellent. All right. Now, building on our earlier chat, what's a must-have superpower for any cybersecurity leader, and do you think you have it or need to evolve it further?
So I don't think there's one superpower. This is my problem. I think that when you think you've got the superpower, you really don't. When you look at some industry legends, and I'm going to refer to a great mate, Ben Doyle. Ben has the absolute ability to articulate the most phenomenally complex things to people to understand. It is amazing to see him talk. My personal thing is I build relationships over a long time. I'm a firm believer in I don't want to call a board member or the CEO or anyone up the food chain or laterally and, hi, I'm Grant, I'm your chief security officer. You shouldn't have to start a conversation like that at 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So I like to build trust and build there. So I'm one of my core skills is building trust and confidence in the people that I report to, I deliver to, but the general population as well of an organization, the different cohorts. One of the things for me is I encourage all of my people to go and meet random people in the company, book coffee, look somewhere in the directory. Hey, I'm Bob from the SOC. Want to come and learn what you do, and you build organizational knowledge. And when you do that, you know, Bob and the person that Bob's had coffee with become your eyes and ears in the organization, right? So building trust and relationships and it's not hollow marketing, but just giving people confidence that you're there, for me, is there. And it builds great teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, it's always about the people.
Or for me, absolutely. It's always about the people. You know, Endeavour Group was a phenomenal team that we built there, because literally I was cyber employee number one, and we grew. And by the time I left, I think we were about 25, sort of thing. But over a 4-year period, we had 4 resignations and we had engagement scores of 92 and 95. You know, kind of averaging. Like, we were a phenomenally high performing team. But that comes with things like watching burnout, headspace conversations. Every Wednesday we would sit down and, as a group, all 25 of us, talk about headspace, not work related. You know, how's people feeling there? It was the most attended meeting of the week. People want to be heard. People want to be listened to, sort of thing. If you can create that environment, I guess there. So that's building those teams is probably my superpower, to be fair.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And how do you keep up with new threats that are probably perhaps more relevant to an industry or a client that you're working with, without going all the way down the rabbit hole?
Yeah, this is a challenge. This isn't easy. And anyone who says they've nailed it, please give me a call. Coming from a technical background, sometimes I like to still delve and think that I fully understand some of the deeper technologies, which is a myth. I'm totally cognizant of that. You know, my value is no longer being a deep technical expert. It's leadership and advice. So how do I do it? I read less, and you might think that's a strange approach, but we in the industry, cybersecurity as an industry, we're very good on opinions. We like to give our opinions continually, right? And whilst they're quite often experiential in informing, they're not always the best outcome, because there's a bit of a personal flavour. So what I found is a couple of core things I read. There's a security TLDR, which I really, really like. There's the standard big reports, the Verizon Data Breach Report, which was released, I think, yesterday, sort of thing. There's a number of big reports, and I try not to get too caught up in the minutiae of what's today. You know, you still read about the big breaches and that, but I find a little less knowledge in this space actually helps me quite a bit, because it's not quite so conflicting.
Yeah. So back when you were more of a technical purist, I imagine you started to think, all right, well, how did that occur? How did they do that? You know, the minutiae of the technical breach. I imagine nowadays you think more, all right, what's the impact on the business? How's that going to play out for that organisation? What's going to happen to the leadership team? What's going to happen to the stock price?
Yeah. So it's about keeping, for me, it's about keeping my C-suite, because I've got a client where I'm chief security officer. It's about keeping them, the CEO and the board, periodically just across what's happening in the world. You know, a bit of a threat landscape, no more than 2 or 3 slides. This is what's happening. This is what our peers are experiencing, and this is where I think it might go. Always putting it around, as I said before, it's my opinion, right? You know, it's really important. In time, however, when you start to they build confidence, your opinion moves on from a little more to fact, perceived fact. So for me, I think that regular updating is one way of keeping your board across it, or your senior stakeholders. But the other thing too is celebrate wins. If you have a breach or you have an incident, get an incident report out in 2 or 3 days. Right? Write it in language you're going to understand. Write it with a business impact statement in it as well. The business impact statement might be no availability or service impacting impacts were felt from this incident, or it might be we lost the ATMs in 3 venues for 22 hours, sort of thing. And you can put a dollar cost on it using quantitative risk analysis. We believe this cost the organisation this much money. When you start to do that, people start to realise that cyber events are a real thing, not a rare thing. One of the key lessons that I always take from the occupational health and safety world is they report weekly, how many car accidents happened, how many on-site incidents happened, all of that. And that makes us more aware that this could happen to us. And I've kind of borrowed from stole is probably a stronger word from that mindset. And I use that quite a bit.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I thought that's a fantastic idea, drawing from the OHS world. And then I suppose, I've always thought, spinning this more into sharing information with the public about incidents that affect the general population. When we had that series of large breaches, some different companies shared information differently, and some are more transparent than others. And I really do think that the way Latitude went about it was quite different from the others, and perhaps they'd learnt from the others. In that they were very transparent and remain so now, and publicly speaking, on forums like this about what occurred, why it occurred, and I know some of the people there, and I think it's very much about sharing with the industry to reduce the risk for everyone else, which I think's a really positive step for them.
I think one of the best breach notifications I've ever seen was ANU. Australian National University, when they got breached a few years ago. They were one of the first to be open, honest, transparent. And it shocked a lot of people. And I think there have been a number of organisations since that have taken that approach. Breach stakeholder management has become an art. It used to be you sent a note out and we're good. Now it's, bigger than your technical response team sort of thing, because there are so many, broader, wider impacts now sort of thing. And, you need to be seen, I guess, I don't know if that's the right phrasing, but you need to be seen to be telling people what you know as soon as you know it. Now, that's sometimes counterintuitive to getting an actor out of your network, because you kind of don't want the actor to know what you know, sort of thing. So it is a balance, and I don't think it's a simple one.
No, it's not. And interesting that you mention ANU. It hasn't been released as at the date that we're recording this, but I previously had a chat with Suthaga, who was the CISO at ANU when that communication would have been released. Yes. So it's a nice tie in there. Thank you very much. Now, looking at the next generation of cybersecurity leaders, what's your approach to mentoring or developing those future leaders?
I think that there's a couple of issues here for me around there today. When you're seeing people come out of university or the TAFE Cert 4 or Associate Diploma into roles, working their way up a pure siloed vertical of cybersecurity, I think we could be lacking some of the diversity of thought that we're experiencing now, and we're starting to see lessen a little bit, or diversity of experience. One of the things I always try to encourage anyone I coach or mentor is diversity of experience. I'm a generalist. I've done literally nearly every role in cyber, sort of thing, from projects to pen testing to architecture to operations, where my true love is. But but today we kind of see people take very narrow verticals sort of thing. And the one of the things I'd say to people is broaden your experience. Go and be a BA in another part of the business for a year, right? Get secondments into, get your employee, if you're in a big company, get them to second you into another area, accounting, finance, wherever. Understand how the business operates, right? I always think one of the best people to have during a breach on your side is the CFO, and it's got nothing to do with money. The CFO understands the most critical parts of the business from a P&L, a profit and loss sheet, balance sheet. And if you need to make decisions based on business impact, they're the one you want in there advising you, sort of thing, on what good outcomes are. That's the one. The other one too is learn how to write. Executive writing is one thing, but being able to communicate well in a non-technical manner is a very powerful tool. Conflict resolution is another good one. You, as a CISO, you will spend a bunch of time de-escalating conflict and business priorities and things like that. Do some training, do some courses, whether formally or by coach or mentor. Those three things for me are a broad experience across the business. Learn how to write and conflict resolution or management for me are three things that we just don't see in the up and coming leaders. The other thing too is when you write, stamp your character on it. It's you, right? You don't have to write like a robot. I've been told my writing can be too casual at times, sort of things, but they always know that I've written it, sort of thing. And stay away from ChatGPT and the Gen AI things to write your formal things. You need to know the topic that you're writing about, and you need to know it well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad you mentioned diversity. Mary-Anne, one of the previous guests, had a uniquely diverse background herself. And you touched on diversity within an individual, the diversity of their experiences, but the other aspect of it is the diversity of a team and those team members, and making sure that they create a diverse capability as well.
Yeah. I think diversity, we tend to look at gender, sexuality, and ability, sort of thing. And I think it can be so much broader than that. There's cultural diversity. There's I did a piece of work at Endeavour, and one of the things I was shocked to learn that there's a 2% employment rate in the deaf community. There's a number of a number of elements of diversity that you can bring into a group to spark thought, to spark conversation. That's a whole diversity is about opportunity for everyone. That's the basis for it. But the benefits for it are so amazing if you do it well, sort of thing. And you've got to manage it, right? It's not set and forget. You do need to manage it, and sometimes you'll have that conflict, sort of thing, because not everyone in the world gets on perfectly well, and you need to manage it. But you can build some amazing teams with the right level of diversity.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, unfortunately, courtesy of people like President Trump, and other Australian leaders, it's been viewed as a woke concept, but I just think that's total bullshit. It's a massive opportunity for organisations to improve how they operate by leveraging that capability that they don't currently have, because they don't have people looking at problems from that unique perspective.
I think it's more fun. I think it's more basic than that. People of our era, let's say, Mark, used to have a saying, and it was "give everyone a fair go." Right? That for me, that was non-gender, non-sexual orientation, non-cultural, non-nationality. It was just everyone had a fair go. And for me, I think we've lost that a little bit. There are areas of diversity or cohorts of people that are still ignored, and others are given more favour. Let's give everyone a fair go. Let's help those who need a helping hand, and that's talking about the difference between equality and equity. And for me, I think that sometimes then you need a bit of equity.
Yep. No, good point. All right, so if you could magically make every employee follow one security rule without question, what would it be?
Great question. I think this was in the list of things that you gave me that I probably thought I'll think of something on the fly. And here I am. What's the one thing? Probably don't reuse your passwords
Yep.
for me. Yeah. Yeah. But there's no, limiting me to just one is almost cruel, I have to say, Mark. You know, email's not a secure platform. Please remember that. Once it's online, it's there forever. There are so many things that that we need to do. Like once again, like occupational health and safety, there are things you just don't do, and we don't have that in cybersecurity. We're not yet. We're a long way from where we were, however. So kudos to the world for getting on board.
Yep, absolutely. All right, and just to wrap things up, what's the worst piece of cybersecurity advice you've ever heard?
Do we really need to bother our customers with having a password? I actually sat in a meeting where that was said
by an executive.
And it wasn't, for clarity, it wasn't any of my historical retail employers. It was when I was consulting many years ago. But yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes, unfortunately, stories like that still remain far too common.
Yeah, and I think we've come a long way in cyber. When I started in cyber in 2001, sort of thing, it was called digital security. It wasn't even information security yet; it was called digital security. And there were 6 of us for a company that was 450,000 people. And we did what we did, and I know for a fact that function is now close to 2,000 people. So we've come a long way. It's realised, but I think it's softening a little bit in the conversation that we had before we started the podcast. I think people are softening a little bit. I think we need to ensure that people are held to account a little bit harder than they are currently.
Yeah. There's definitely some concerning trends right now within cybersecurity with budget cuts and so on. Grant, it's been a real pleasure to have you as one of our inaugural guests on the CyberMindsz podcast. Really? Thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing our relationship and hearing more about how your business progresses.
Thanks, Mark. It's been a pleasure, and as always, happy to come back whenever you want.
3, 2, 1